Hey friend, welcome or welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on the video. Listen, if this is your first time here, welcome. I give lighthearted reviews and recaps of some of my favorite TV shows and movies. So if this is something that interests you, go ahead and click that subscribe button. If you like what you see, hit that like button for your girl. And of course, leave me a comment. I have a lot more content coming to my channel, and I'm glad you're here. So with that being said, let's get into it. Okay, y'all. So we are back for one final time. This is The Handmaid's Tale, season 6, episode 10. This is the series finale, y'all. This one is called The Handmaid's Tale, and this was a satisfying series finale, I must say. I think coming into it, I was expecting a little bit more, but now that I watched it and now that I was able to digest it, I was like, you know what? I'm satisfied. I'm satisfied by the way that it ended. I'm good with the conversations that were had. I especially love the ending scene with June going back to the Waterfords and how they circled that whole thing back to season 1, episode 1, with her sitting on the windowsill. I thought that was brilliant for them to do that. And all in all, I'm happy with it. I'm not jumping up for joy, crying my eyes out over this series finale, but I'm satisfied with it. So, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about it this time, but we're not going to do recap scene by scene. I think with this one, I'm just going to give a broad review of my thoughts and opinions on it. I'm going to talk about what I liked and what I didn't like. I'm going to talk about some of the conversations that were had and what I expected and what I got. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so we're picking up where we left off. We have all the fighting that's been going on. It looks like they have been fighting for a few weeks, but it looks like Gilead retreated. So they are out of Boston, and Boston now belongs to America. So Luke is still in the fight. He's ready to still continue to go to New York with Mayday, and he's gonna, get Boston up and running. I think he's talking about getting the power turned back on and maybe getting the planes and the transportation systems up and running. And he's telling June that if he can do that, then we can get Holly Sr. and Holly Jr. to come to Boston and they can start their brand new lives. But as for him, he's going to continue the fight. And what I liked about this conversation between June and Luke was that there was no sugarcoating of their marriage, and they knew what it was. They knew what it always has been. These two characters have been through so much, throughout these past years of fighting with Gilead, being in Gilead, June there for so many years, and Luke being able to escape to Canada, and then June joining him in Canada, but still, they weren't really able to connect the way, we thought that they should have connected. I mean, a lot had happened. She had had a baby by another man and, sent that baby to Luke and had Luke raise, baby Holly. And it was just a whole lot for them to endure as a couple. So I love to see their conversation and I love to see how they kind of kept it real with each other. We are not the same people that we were before, and it was also good to see Luke standing on his own and having passion about something, that really didn't necessarily include getting June back or June's mental health or June's safety. This was all about the big fight, right? Fighting for, America, bringing down Gilead. And he's all in. Like, he's like, we're going. I found a spot right off of the New York border, and we're getting ready to go blow some stuff up, right? And then June tells him, well, I found out that Hannah has been moved from Colorado to DC. Her daddy got a promotion. So, you know, she's a little bit closer, but that's where I'm going. So we know where June's going to fight. We know where Luke's going to fight. And they're okay with it. And I really appreciated that, that they had that kind of closure and that they're good with each other, just how they are, not as husband and wife, not as mushy, ooh, I love you. But, and the love is still there. But I did love the fact that they did have that come together and to close that out. It was great to see. So, that is one thing that I did love about this episode was how June and Luke's love story kind of closed out. I know they'll see each other again, and I don't know if they're going to be in the testaments, but there's an understanding there, and I appreciated that. Okay, Next, let's talk about these flashbacks that went on during this episode. There were a lot of Hannah June flashbacks, right? And at first, I was kind of like, why are we doing all these flashbacks of her and Hannah as a child? You know, we have the looks like they were at a carnival or something, and she's telling Hannah, "Don't eat up all the popcorn. You know, your stomach's gonna be upset." And you know, hey, we're gonna buy a ticket to the go ride the merry-go-round, and she's buying the ticket and she turns around and Hannah's disappeared. And I'm just like, what is all this? But then as I kept watching it and after I finished watching the show, I was like, okay, all right, I think I kind of understand what was going on there. So the way I took it was that she was kind of showing the love, right? Love between her and Hannah, and the fact that no matter what happens, I'm always going to be there. I think it was one flashback where Hannah was like, Mom, you left me. And she was like, I'll never leave you. Moms never leave. We always come back, and I think that was a nod to the Testaments and was a nod to June continuing to fight for Hannah. And so looking at it that way, I was like, okay. But looking at it in the moment of watching the show, I was just kind of like, it's a lot of flashbacks going on here. But speaking of the love between mother and daughter, let's talk about June and her mom and Holly. We have a beautiful scene between June and baby Holly where she's talking to her and she's pretty much explaining that she's got to go back to save the other little girls of Gilead and protect them because she doesn't want, Holly to be caught up in that same, cycle of Gilead and having that threat over her head, So she's saying that she's going to go back and fight. So while she's talking to baby Holly about that, her mom is sitting there and she's listening to the whole thing. And you can see the hurt in her eyes because she doesn't want her baby to go back out there and fight. She's like, well, hey, who's going to protect you? And so June just pretty much said, hey, you're the one who taught me how to fight, and so I just need you to watch Holly for a little while longer, but I need to fight because we're not safe, because she's like, well, who's going to keep you safe? And she's like, hey, none of us are safe. Gilead could come back and strike at any time, any moment, and it's just like, Gilead was able to become Gilead because we didn't fight before. And so June is just like, this is the only way to beat them is to continue to fight. And so she hopes that her mom understands, and her mom does. And her mom actually tells her, hey, look, you need to write a book, right? Luke had already told her she needed to write a book. And so now her mother's telling her, write the book. You got to write this down. You got to be able to let your daughters know who you are, what you did, how you fought, the good fight, right? For America and bringing Gilead down. And so I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it's a great idea for her to write her book. And so we don't know at the time if June's going to write it or not, but I thought it was a great scene between her and her mom. Her mom is going to keep Holly while she goes out to fight. She's headed to DC and she's going to try to see if she can get Hannah. So we'll see. We know that Hannah's going to be heavy in the new show, The Testaments. And so I'm excited to see what happens there with Hannah and June, but that reunion is just something that I actually thought that I was going to see, or we were going to see Hannah this episode, or there was going to be some kind of reunion, but come to find out, Hannah wasn't even there. She wasn't even in Boston. They were in Colorado the whole time. So I don't know if I had missed that, but I didn't realize it until this episode. But, good luck to June. I hope she's able to go and get her baby girl. There's nothing like a mother's love. And I thought it was a very strong scene between her mom and Holly and that whole thing and closing that up. So we do see that they were able to bring baby Holly and Holly Senior to Boston. So they are getting things, squared away in Boston. They're getting the lights turned on. We did see June, she burnt her handmaid's uniform in the fire, and it was a great scene. As soon as she burnt it, the lights flicked on just to show hope, right? So I love that scene as well. But there are some things, like I said, that I loved, and those scenes did touch me a little bit. But there's also a couple of scenes where I was like, I don't know. So let's talk about those. Okay, let's talk about the woman we love to hate. Well, some of us love to hate, Serena Joy. Now, my brother, he is a big fan of the Serena Joy character, right? So him and I, we were talking last night about this episode, and he was just like, I thought it was perfect how her story ended. She found her redemption arc, and but for me, I was like, nope, 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 nope. Because I wanted a little bit more with Serena. I wanted Serena to feel a little bit more pain. And the only reason why I said that is because all the pain that she caused, all this is all her, Gilead. This is her baby. This is her idea, her baby, her big mess. And she's still here hiding out in a refugee camp. I mean, Gilead doesn't want anything to do with her. She can't go back to Canada. She doesn't have a passport. There's nothing she can do. The only reason why I think they are extending grace to Serena Joy is because she was the one that played an active part in the takedown of Gilead by letting June and them know what was going on with the commanders and that they were getting on that flight. Otherwise, I think Serena Joy definitely would be back in Gilead, and who knows what Gilead was going to do to her. But nevertheless, they are protecting her. And I wasn't really pleased with the idea of what they did with her. So she's, oh, woe is me with June, and I don't have anywhere to go, and I'm not important anymore. And, seems like I brought Boston, down to its knees twice. And I'm just like, yeah, you did. And it's nothing to be proud of. But June says something profound to her. And she's like, well, how about just be Noah's mom? Just be his mom. That's enough, right? And so I think she did receive that. However, and this is what me and my brother was talking about last night, I feel like she only received it because of the situation that she's in now. She has nothing. She doesn't have her husband. She doesn't have the house. She doesn't have the power. She doesn't have any of that. It's just her and her baby. So, yeah, she's going to receive it. And yeah, she's going to cling on to baby Noah, but she doesn't even have a change of clothes for the baby. Doesn't have any diapers, doesn't have anything. So, um, she's talking to June. Twillo comes up and is like, hey, I got to get you out of here. So she boards a bus to this refugee camp. And then when she gets there, they're like, hey, we're not even sure that you're supposed to be here with a kid because we don't, typically do kids. You may have to go tomorrow. So I kind of felt a little satisfaction with that. Like, yep, go ahead and give her the pain because she needs to feel it. But anyway, she's content with it. She got the apology. She apologized again to June, and I think she was sincere in this one. And June actually gave her the forgiveness that she was looking for. So good for June. I mean, June's got her stuff with her and has her issues or whatever, but I think all in all, does have a good heart. She did give Serena a bag that had some stuff in it to help the baby. So I'm okay if I don't see Serena Joy again. Not my favorite character, but I mean, shout out to Yvonne Strahovski. She played an amazing role for 6 seasons as Serena Joy Waterford, and then Wharton. But so long, Serena. I wish you well, you and your baby. I really would like to see baby Noah. Maybe see what if he's going to do something to fight to maybe avenge his father's death, but I don't know. We'll see. But that was the end for Serena Joy and June. Okay, now let's talk about my girl Aunt Lydia. Now, we remember Aunt Lydia from the last episode. Last time we saw her, she was getting ready to meet her maker, right? Right before the battle started, she had got up there in front of everybody and she said some stuff that really wasn't pleasing to Gilead. She said that her girls were being controlled by evil, godless men. I believe those were the words that she used. So to see her back in Gilead, I got questions, y'all. I want to know what happened. Why is she able to go back there and be an aunt? What is her role now? What happened? They didn't go into it this episode, but we did see Aunt Lydia. We find out from Tuillo that they're that he's actually keeping in touch with Aunt Lydia to get some intel on Janine. And so speaking of that, this is probably one of the the things in this episode that I was just kind of like, what is going on here? Janine. This was a big letdown for me. I had so many questions about Janine. I remember on the last episode when they took Janine, because I remember watching and I was like, why did that eye take her? Where is he going with her? And so just to see her being dropped off at the border, just, at first I thought she wasn't alive at first. The way they kind of just like flopped her down and then just kind of walked off. And I was like, oh no. Because I wanted so bad for Janine to have a happy ending, for Janine to have her baby. And I'm like, they did not just drop this girl off at the border and she's no longer with us. But she wasn't. She was still alive. They ended up waking up June because they wanted, I guess, a familiar face for Janine. But they did. They dropped her off at the border. But also at the border was Naomi and Aunt Lydia. And the whole scene just confused me. I wasn't happy with it. I wanted more for Janine. I wanted answers. I wanted to know what happened to her, why the eyes took her, where did they take her, what happened with the negotiations to bring her back to America? Like, what happened there? Was it Aunt Lydia? Did she coordinate that with Twillo? And how was Aunt Lydia, somebody who pretty much gave Gilead her butt to kiss last episode, able to make this kind of a coordination? The only thing I can think of is that, well, all the commanders are unalive, so maybe that's how she was able to do it. But I still think that there are some people that were there that remember what Aunt Lydia said. So not really sure how she still has her job Monday morning. You know what I mean? Based on what she did over the weekend, if you will. So it'll be interesting to know. I do know she's in the Testaments, so it's going to be interesting to know what happened with her. I hope they give us an explanation as to how she was able to still be Aunt Lydia, and what is she doing now, and what happened. Why is she not on a wall in Gilead somewhere? But nevertheless, I did not like the fact that they just dropped off Janine and that was that on that. We also want to know, how did she get her daughter? Did Naomi just give the daughter away? I mean, stuff like that doesn't typically happen in Gilead. Just, oh, okay, girl, here you go. I do know that Naomi, kind of really didn't want the baby in the first place, but I was thinking, because of the conversation that she had with Lawrence before he left, that maybe she would kind of, cling on to baby Charlotte a little bit more and be like, this is all I have. I no longer have my husband. However, what made me think different of that is because they didn't really have that kind of love. It was more like a business arrangement between Naomi and Lawrence. So it wasn't like oh, well, this child's going to live out, Lawrence's legacy. I just don't think Naomi was there. So it was probably easier to give the little girl, to her mother, to Janine. I was really happy to see that scene. It didn't make me cry, it didn't make me tear up, but I was touched a little bit. I think I wanted more. I wanted them. I kind of felt like in the back of my mind that she was going to get her daughter back, but the way that it happened, her laying out on the road and then just bringing the baby and all that, I don't know. I wanted to see it a little different. I wanted to see it, but not that way. And then I had so many questions about it. I don't think I could really enjoy it like I wanted to. So although I'm glad that it was a happy ending for Janine, I just didn't want to see it that way. And I had so many questions that were left unanswered. But here we go. Congrats to Janine. I hope we do see her later on, but that was pretty much the end of her story. So another moment in the show that I thought was interesting was that, now that Gilead is free, people are able to, walk around and kind of just take it all in. So that's what June's doing. She's walking the streets of Boston and she's looking at this one particular store and she hears a voice. And the voice says, this used to be an ice cream store back in the day. They had the best salted caramel ice cream. And she looks and she sees that it is none other than Emily. That's right. Her Handmaid's Tale walking partner back in the earlier seasons is Emily. Emily is back, y'all. And when I saw her, I was just like, oh my God, it was so good to see them together again. They gave each other a hug. And, June is like, I thought you were gone. Like, what happened? She tells us that she ended up in Bridgeport, Connecticut as a Martha. Um, And so I remember her as going to Canada, not really being able to reintegrate with her family. She did have a wife and they had a little boy, and she just had a hard time, and I believe that what I remember the story was she went back to fight for Mayday, but I could be wrong. But anyway, they did find her and they did explain what happened to her. She said that her commander actually ended up being a friend. So we know that, even though she was a Martha, I don't think she was in any kind of danger like that. So they go on and they reminisce. She's talking about how, she does get to talk to her wife from time to time, and she did get to FaceTime her son, on his birthday, which was huge, and that he's growing up. So, so good to see Emily. I hope that we see her in the Testaments. I'm not sure though, how that's going to play out, but it was really good seeing her. Another corny scene, I'll say it was corny. It was a little cheesy. I just didn't know where it came from. Was June again? She's having these thoughts, and she thinks of a world without Gilead. What if we lived in a world where Gilead didn't exist? It never existed, right? So we have all of the ladies, and they're there, and they're singing in a karaoke bar. So although I thought the scene was cute enough, I just thought it was just kind of out of place. I didn't understand what was going on here. Why would you think of a world where there never was a Gilead? Because that means you never would have met Rita. You never would have met Janine. So, but yet they got all of them. They're there and they're singing karaoke. Maybe I was reading into it a little bit too much, but it just seemed a little weird and a little out of place. But nevertheless, I do realize this show is so dark and it's so hard to film. I can imagine that they try to keep it light all the time. I've seen some interviews with Elizabeth Moss where, I think she was on Jennifer Hudson's show not too long ago, and she was saying that, even by being a director, how hard it is. She says sometimes it's like herding cats. Like, I will turn this car around. She's got to get into mom mode because they're so silly on set. They can't keep a straight face. They're always cutting up and joking around. So it's good to hear that because these scenes are so dark. There's so much going on. There's sexual assault, and there's killings, and there's this and that, and it's just a lot. And I hope that these actors do find the opportunity to go home and kind of disconnect, before they reconnect with their families, because it could be dark. So I did appreciate the scene for what it was, but I just thought it was just a little out of place. All right, let's move on to the last scene of this show. The last, I think it was like probably my favorite scene ever of this whole series. But this is when June goes back to the Waterford house. Let's get into it. Okay, so lastly, let's talk about June and her trip back to the Waterford house. Okay, so we know that Tuello did give her some kind of pass where she's able to, walk freely around the city with no problem. And she ends up back there, back to the Waterfords, back to where it all began, right? So we see the house, it's in bad shape, it's been messed up from the war, but June goes in there anyway. So she walks in, she goes up the steps. Of course, it's been abandoned. She walks up and she sits down at that same windowsill that we see her sitting at season 1, episode 1. And I thought, wow, this was just amazing. It was just an amazing scene. It wasn't a whole lot of dialogue here. Her walking up to the house and her walking in the house. You just heard the music playing. I think that's that music that they play for her and Nick. But anyway, you see that music playing, and it was just powerful to see. You see her walking in, you see how the sunlight's hitting inside of the room, and then she's just sitting there. She takes out what it looks like is a recorder, and she starts to record. And the dialogue that she's saying kind of sounds like the same dialogue from season 1, episode 1, when she's introducing herself. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I know what she's doing. She's writing the book. And I also thought it was great when she reached out her hand and, Hannah took her hand, so it's sort of like a transference of, power in the fight. So it just kind of gave a nod to the testaments and what I think Hannah is going to do coming up here soon. So I loved it. I love how it ended. At the end, she said her name was Alfred. So that lets you know, yep, she's writing this book. So I'm really interested to see how it's going to turn out for this next show, The Testaments, that's coming out. But all in all, I think it was a great way to end the season, to end the series. This series finale didn't knock my socks off, but I am satisfied with it. There were some good points on it. I did have some questions, but it didn't leave me with a whole lot of questions where I'm like, oh my God, what a total letdown. So I'm happy with it. I'm looking forward to the testaments. What I want to know is, what do you guys think about it? What did you think about this series finale? And what did you think about the characters, how it ended, the closure, right? Tell me what you thought about Serena Joy. Do you think that she got off too easy? Do you think that we'll see her again? What about Aunt Lydia? Are you like me? Do you have questions about Aunt Lydia? How does she get back to be auntie out there? Janine, what's going to happen with her? Were you happy with her storyline? And also Luke and June and the whole thing. Just let me know your thoughts. I'm curious to see how you guys are thinking about it, and we can talk it down in the comments. So please, 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 if you liked it, give me a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will be back with more TV shows and movies really, really soon. I am going to start Nine Perfect Strangers. I am doing The Shy, and I got some other shows that are coming up real soon. So, stick with your girl. We're going to have a whole lot of fun. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.